Welcome to Almost Alone. Tonight's episode takes you across 3 countries, 3 transit systems, and 3 moments where escape wasn't an option. When you're traveling far from home, the rules change. You don't know which streets are safe. You don't speak the language well enough to ask for help. And the people who watch you, the ones who make you their target, they know all of this. They know you're alone. They know you're tired. They know you have nowhere to go. These are 3 stories about being trapped in motion, about realizing too late that the person sitting near you isn't there by accident, about that moment when you understand that the next stop isn't coming fast enough. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been listening, I appreciate you. Either way, consider subscribing. It helps others find these stories. Let's begin. I'm 31 now. This happened when I was 22, backpacking through Europe after college graduation. One of those trips where you book everything last minute, stay in hostels, and take the cheapest transportation you can find because you're trying to stretch $3,000 across 2 months. I'd been in Vienna for 4 days. Beautiful city, safe, easy to navigate even with my terrible German. But I was running low on money faster than I'd planned, and hotels were eating my budget alive. So when I found an overnight bus from Vienna to Prague for 18 euros, I booked it without thinking twice. It left at midnight and arrived at 7 in the morning. Perfect. I'd save a night's accommodation and wake up in a new city ready to explore. The bus station in Vienna was mostly empty when I arrived around 11:30. Just a few other backpackers, some locals heading home, and a bored attendant behind a plexiglass window who barely looked up when I showed my ticket. The bus pulled in just before midnight. It was older than I expected. Faded paint, windows that didn't quite seal right, seats that had seen better decades. The interior smelled like stale cigarettes and something chemical, like industrial cleaner that hadn't fully dried, but it was cheap. That's what mattered. I got on and moved toward the back, finding a window seat about 3/4 of the way down. There were maybe 10 other passengers spread throughout the bus. Most put their bags on the seat next to them and settled in with headphones or neck pillows, preparing to sleep through the 7-hour ride. I did the same. Bag on the seat next to me, jacket balled up as a pillow against the window, phone charging from a portable battery. The driver was an older man, late 50s maybe, with a gray beard and a tired expression. He didn't make any announcements, didn't welcome anyone aboard, just closed the doors, turned off the interior lights, and pulled out of the station. The bus rattled as we merged onto the highway, and the sound became this constant low hum that should have been soothing, but wasn't. Something about it felt wrong. Too loud in some frequencies, too quiet in others. It made it impossible to fully relax. For the first hour, I tried to sleep but couldn't quite manage it. The seat was uncomfortable, and every time I started to drift off, the bus would hit a rough patch of road and jolt me awake. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through photos from Vienna, trying to pass the time. That's when I first noticed him. A man sitting near the back of the bus, maybe 4 rows behind me on the opposite side. I only saw him because I'd turned around to adjust my bag, and my eyes swept across the darkened interior. He was sitting completely still, hands folded in his lap, staring in my direction. I looked away quickly and faced forward again, my heart beating just slightly faster. I told myself it was nothing. People zone out on long bus rides. Maybe he was looking past me at something else. Maybe he wasn't even fully awake. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Around 1:30 in the morning, the bus slowed and pulled off the highway. I sat up and looked out the window. We were turning onto a narrow service road that led to what looked like a rest area, but not the kind with a gas station and bright lights. Just a gravel parking lot surrounded by dense trees, lit by a single flickering light pole. The bus rolled to a stop. The driver stood, opened the door, and stepped outside without saying a word. I watched through the window as he walked a few feet from the bus, lit a cigarette, and stood there smoking, not checking the engine, not looking at his phone, just standing, staring into the woods. The air inside the bus felt heavier now, stale and warm. I could smell someone's coffee breath from a few rows up, mixed with that chemical cleaner smell. A few other passengers were awake now, glancing around with confused or annoyed expressions. An older woman a few rows ahead muttered something in Czech and closed her eyes again. I glanced back toward where I'd seen the man earlier. He was gone. My stomach tightened. I scanned the visible seats, trying to find him in the dim light. Most of the bus was in shadow, lit only by the faint glow from the parking lot outside. Then I saw movement. He was walking down the aisle toward the front of the bus, slowly, deliberately. His face was shadowed, but I could see his silhouette clearly. He stopped about halfway up the bus and sat down. 5 rows behind me now, same side as me, closer. The driver finished his cigarette, flicked it into the gravel, and got back on the bus. Still no explanation. He just sat down, closed the door, and started the engine. We pulled back onto the highway. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. People move around on buses. Maybe he was stretching his legs. Maybe his original seat was uncomfortable. But my hands were shaking when I put my phone back in my pocket. About 45 minutes later, the bus slowed again. Another exit. Another dark road. Another unexplained stop. This time it wasn't even a rest area. Just an empty pull-off next to what looked like farmland. No lights except our headlights and the glow of the moon. The driver opened the door but didn't get out this time. He just sat there in his seat, staring straight ahead with the door hanging open, letting cold air pour into the bus. I heard someone behind me shift in their seat. When I glanced back, the man was standing in the aisle, not walking, just standing there, one hand on the seat back in front of him, facing my direction. My throat went dry. He stood there for maybe 30 seconds, perfectly still, then sat down again. 3 rows behind me now. I could feel my pulse in my ears. That thrumming sensation when your heart is beating so hard you can hear it. The driver closed the door and we started moving again. I wanted to turn around and look at him directly. Wanted to make eye contact and see if he'd back down, or at least acknowledge what he was doing. But I couldn't make myself do it. Instead, I stared at the black window next to me, trying to see his reflection in the glass. But the angle was wrong. All I could see was my own pale face staring back at me, eyes too wide. The next stop came about an hour later, just after 3 in the morning. By now I was exhausted but wired, that horrible combination where your body is screaming for sleep, but your brain won't shut off. My mouth was dry. My hands felt clammy. When the bus stopped this time, another dark pull-off, another unexplained pause. I didn't look back. I just sat there, staring straight ahead, listening. I heard him move. The soft sound of someone standing up. The creak of the bus floor under weight. Footsteps moving forward. He walked past my row and sat down directly in front of me. I stopped breathing. He was close enough now that I could smell him. Old jacket, stale sweat, something else underneath, metallic, like coins. I could see the back of his head, dark hair, unwashed. The collar of his jacket was frayed. He didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge me, just sat there, completely still, facing forward. The bus started moving again, and I sat frozen in my seat, unable to think clearly. My vision was tunneling. Everything felt too bright and too dark at the same time. I needed to move, needed to get away from him. But where would I go? The bus was still moving. There were no other seats far enough away that he wouldn't just follow me again. So I just sat there, counting the minutes, praying for dawn. At the next stop, I'd lost track of time by now, but the sky was still completely black. I heard him stand up again. I pressed myself against the window, trying to make myself smaller, but he didn't turn toward me. He walked forward, past several more rows, and sat down again. Now he was 4 rows ahead, farther away. For a moment, I felt relief. Maybe he'd lost interest. Maybe I'd imagined the whole pattern. But then I realized what he was doing. He was positioning himself where he could see me. I looked up and caught his reflection in the bus's front windshield. His head was turned slightly, eyes angled back toward the rows behind him, watching me in the glass, the same way I'd been trying to watch him. My stomach turned over and I tasted something sour in the back of my throat. I thought I might actually throw up. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and opened my messaging app, but there was no service. We were somewhere in rural Czech countryside, miles from any cell tower. I typed out a message to my friend in Vienna anyway, just to have something to do with my hands. "There's a man on the bus. He keeps moving closer. I don't know what to do." The message sat there unsent, the little icon spinning uselessly. The next time the bus stopped, he didn't move. Neither did I. We just sat there in our respective seats. Him 4 rows ahead, me behind, while the driver smoked another cigarette in the darkness. When we started moving again, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. His phone was out. He was holding it up, angled back toward the seats behind him. The screen was dark, but the camera lens caught the light from a passing car. He was taking photos of me. I yanked my jacket up over my face and turned toward the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass. My whole body was shaking now, not just my hands, everything. I stayed like that, face hidden, body curled toward the window, for the rest of the trip. It felt like hours. It was probably 90 minutes. When the bus finally slowed and I saw lights through the gap in my jacket, real lights, city lights, not just another empty pull-off, I almost cried. The driver's voice came over the speaker for the first time all night. "Praha, Hlavní nádraží." Prague, main station. The bus pulled into a well-lit terminal and stopped. I didn't wait for anyone else to stand. The second the doors opened, I grabbed my bag and pushed past the other passengers, half stumbling down the aisle. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at anyone. I just ran. I made it into the station and kept walking until I found a bathroom. I locked myself in a stall and sat on the closed toilet lid, trying to catch my breath. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. After a few minutes, I forced myself to stand and leave the stall. I washed my face in the sink, the cold water helping me feel slightly more human. When I looked up at the mirror, I saw him, standing at the bathroom entrance, just outside the doorway, watching me through the gap. I spun around, my heart hammering. But when I looked directly at the entrance, no one was there, just empty hallway. I stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where I'd seen him, or thought I'd seen him, trying to convince myself it had been my imagination. Eventually, I left the bathroom and found a cafe inside the station. I bought coffee I didn't drink and sat at a table facing the entrance until the sun came up and the station filled with morning commuters. I never saw him again. But for the rest of my time in Prague, 3 days that I cut down to 2, I kept seeing men in dark jackets who looked almost like him. I'd freeze on the sidewalk, heart racing, only to realize it was someone completely different. I think about that bus ride all the time. I think about how he moved systematically, testing me, watching to see if I'd react, if I'd scream, if anyone would help. No one did. And I think about his phone, the photos he took. I wonder if I'm saved somewhere on a hard drive, if he shows those photos to other people, if I'm part of some collection. I wonder how many women have sat in that seat, on that same bus, feeling that same creeping dread as a stranger moved closer, stop by stop. And I wonder how many of them made it to Prague. I'm 46 now. This happened in December of 2008, when I was 29. I was traveling through Germany with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, on what was supposed to be a romantic trip. I was planning to propose to her, But we'd also built in time to visit some old military buddies of mine stationed in Kaiserslautern. We'd taken a 3-day detour to Munich. Beautiful city, especially during Christmas season. The markets, the lights, the snow. It felt like something out of a movie. On our last night, we stayed out later than planned, walking around, soaking it all in. By the time we got to the train station to head back to Kaiserslautern, it was already past 9:30, and we were cutting it dangerously close. We caught a train departing Munich at 9:50. The route required a transfer in Mannheim. Not ideal, but it was the only option that would get us back that night. The first leg of the trip was uneventful. We dozed off for most of it, heads resting against each other, exhausted from walking all day. We arrived in Mannheim around midnight. The station was massive. Multiple platforms, signs in German we couldn't fully read, and not many people around to ask for help. We found our connecting platform and hurried toward it, bags bouncing against our sides. We got there just in time to watch our train pull away. The doors closed right as we reached the platform. I actually saw a few faces in the windows as the train slid past us and disappeared into the tunnel. We just stood there for a second, breathing hard, staring at the empty tracks. "Okay," I said. "We'll catch the next one." My girlfriend checked the schedule board. Her face fell. "That was the last train to Kaiserslautern," she said quietly. "Next one's not until 7 in the morning." I looked at the board myself, hoping she'd misread it, but she was right. There were other trains still running, to Frankfurt, to Stuttgart, to other destinations, but nothing going where we needed to go. It was midnight. We were in Mannheim. We had no hotel. We had no plan. And we were starting to realize how empty the station was getting. The trains still running were commuter lines and regional routes. The international platforms were shutting down. Most of the shops were closed, metal grates being pulled over storefronts. There were maybe a dozen other people scattered across the main hall, a couple with suitcases, an older man asleep on a bench, a woman on her phone near the ticket machines. We walked toward the center of the station, trying to figure out what to do. My girlfriend was exhausted. I could see it in her face. She just wanted to lie down somewhere. That's when I first noticed him. A man, maybe in his mid-40s, standing near one of the support columns about 30 feet away. He was staring at us, not casually glancing, staring. He was tall, over 6 feet, wearing a dark jacket, jeans, boots. His hands were in his pockets, and running down the left side of his face, from his ear to his jaw, was a thick, raised scar. It looked like something straight out of a movie. The kind of scar you don't get from an accident, the kind that has a story behind it, the kind that makes you think about knives. I didn't say anything to my girlfriend yet. I just steered us toward a bench closer to where the last few travelers were gathered and sat down. "We need to find a hotel," she said. I nodded, but I was still watching the man out of the corner of my eye. He hadn't moved. He was still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching us. His expression wasn't angry, wasn't excited, just focused, like we were something he was evaluating. "Let me check outside," I said, "see if there's anything nearby." I stood and walked toward the main entrance, glancing back once. The man had shifted his position slightly. Now he was facing the direction I was walking. I stepped outside into the cold. Mannheim in December is freezing. The wind cut through my jacket immediately, and I could see my breath in clouds. The street in front of the station was mostly empty. A few cars passing by, their headlights briefly illuminating the snow piled along the curb. I looked around, scanning for anything that looked like a hotel. And then I saw it. About a quarter-mile down the road, partially obscured by bare trees, was a lit sign that said "Hotel." Relief washed over me. I turned and went back inside. My girlfriend was right where I'd left her, sitting on the bench with her arms wrapped around herself, trying to stay warm. "There's a hotel," I said, keeping my voice low. "Not far. maybe a 10-minute walk. Okay, she said, standing. Let's go. I hesitated. We need to move fast, I said. She looked at me, confused. There's a guy, I said quietly. He's been watching us since we got here. I don't know if it's nothing, but I don't like it. When we leave, we're going to walk quickly. Don't look back. Just stay with me. Her face went pale, but she nodded. I picked up both our bags, and we started toward the exit. So did he. I saw him move out of the corner of my eye, peeling away from the column and following us. Not running, not closing the gap quickly, just following, matching our pace. We walked faster. He did too. The few other people in the station, the sleeping man, the couple with luggage, didn't even look up. We reached the doors and stepped outside into the cold. I glanced back. He was still coming. Through the glass doors now, stepping out onto the same sidewalk, maybe 20 yards behind us. Run, I said. We ran. The snow made it harder, our feet slipping on patches of ice hidden under the fresh powder. Our bags were heavy and awkward, banging against our legs. My girlfriend slipped once on a slick spot, and I grabbed her arm to steady her, but we didn't stop. I looked back as we reached the corner. He was outside now, standing under the station's overhang, watching us. But he wasn't running. He was just standing there, hands still in his pockets, that scar visible even from this distance. And then I saw him turn. There was an Asian couple near the entrance, young, maybe in their 20s, with backpacks. Tourists, probably. They were looking at a map, trying to figure out where to go. He started walking toward them. I didn't stop to see what happened next. We kept running. The hotel was farther than I thought. My lungs were burning from the cold air, and my legs felt shaky by the time we finally reached it. The building looked half-finished. Scaffolding covered part of the exterior, and tarps hung over sections of the facade. Construction equipment sat abandoned in the snow-covered lot. But the lights were on, and the door was unlocked. We pushed inside, gasping for air. The lobby was dated but clean. An older man sat behind the front desk, reading a newspaper. He looked up when we entered but didn't smile. Didn't ask if we were okay. Just waited. "Do you have a room?" I asked, still catching my breath. He nodded slowly. "How much?" He told us. It was reasonable, maybe 40 euros. I reached for my wallet. "Cash only," he said. I stopped. "No credit cards?" He shook his head. "Cash." I glanced at my girlfriend. She looked as uneasy as I felt. Cash only. No record, no paper trail, no way to prove we'd even been here if something happened. But we didn't have another option. It was past midnight. We were in an unfamiliar city, and we'd just been followed through the streets by a man with a scar that looked like it came from a fight he'd won. I counted out the euros and handed them over. He gave us a key, an actual metal key, not a card, and gestured toward the stairs with his chin. No receipt, no instructions. No, enjoy your stay. We climbed to the second floor and found our room. It was nicer than I expected, which somehow made it worse. Clean bed, working heat, small bathroom. Everything looked recently renovated, but the whole situation felt wrong. The first thing I did was push the desk in front of the door. "Help me," I said to my girlfriend. She didn't question it. She helped me stack everything we could move into a makeshift barricade. Desk, chair, both our bags. When we were done, I sat down on the floor with my back against the pile, facing the door. "I'll take the first watch," I said. "Watch?" she asked. "I'm not sleeping," I said. "Not yet. I'll stay up for a few hours. Make sure no one tries the door. Then you take over." "You really think—" "I don't know what I think," I said, "but I'm not taking chances." She nodded and sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around herself. For the first hour, I just listened. The hotel wasn't silent. Old buildings never are. I could hear pipes creaking in the walls, footsteps in the hallway, someone walking past our room, then back again a few minutes later, a door opening and closing somewhere down the hall. Every sound made my heart race. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps stop outside our door. I held my breath. For maybe 10 seconds, there was nothing, just silence. Then I heard it, the soft click of metal on metal. Someone was testing the door handle, slowly, carefully, trying to turn it without making noise. The handle moved down slightly, stopped by the lock. There was a pause. Then whoever it was tried again. A little more pressure this time. The barricade shifted slightly as the door pressed against it from the outside. I sat frozen, staring at the door, my pulse hammering in my ears. My girlfriend was asleep on the bed. I didn't wake her. After what felt like forever, the pressure released. The footsteps moved away. I'm still not sure if that actually happened, or if I was so exhausted my mind was playing tricks on me. The line between dreaming and waking had blurred by that point. But I know I didn't imagine the fear I felt. Around 3:30, I woke my girlfriend. "Your turn," I whispered. She sat in the chair while I tried to sleep on the bed, still fully clothed, boots still on. I didn't really sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for morning. At 6:30, before the sun was even up, we packed our bags and left. The desk clerk was gone. The lobby was empty. We just walked out and headed back toward the station. The streets looked different in the early morning light, less threatening, more ordinary. Just a city waking up. But as we walked through the main hall of the station, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. A kiosk near the center of the station was just opening. It sold newspapers, snacks, drinks, normal stuff, and surgical instruments, not hidden away, not in a locked case, just sitting there on display behind glass, right next to the candy bars and magazines. Scalpels, forceps, scissors, hemostats, all neatly arranged like they were everyday items you might pick up on your morning commute. I stopped walking. "What the hell?" my girlfriend whispered. I didn't have an answer. A woman behind the counter was arranging the display, completely casual, like this was the most normal thing in the world. We didn't ask. We just kept walking to our platform and got on the first train to Kaiserslautern. We didn't speak for most of the 2-hour ride. When we finally arrived, my girlfriend looked at me and said, "Let's never come back here." I agreed, we never did. But I still think about that night sometimes. I think about the man with the scar, the way he watched us, the way he followed us out of the station without hesitation. And I think about how he turned away from us when we ran and started walking towards someone else, someone who probably didn't notice him yet, someone who might not have run. I wonder what happened to that couple, if they're okay, if they even remember that night, or if they have their own version of this story. And I think about the surgical instruments in that kiosk, why they were there, who buys them, what they're used for. I've never found a good answer to that question, and I'm not sure I want to. I'm 28 now. This happened 2 years ago when I was teaching English in South Korea. I'd been living in Seoul for about 8 months, working evening classes at a private language academy in Gangnam. The schedule was brutal, 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. most nights, but the pay was decent, and I was finally getting comfortable navigating the city on my own. Seoul's subway system is incredible, clean, efficient, safe. It runs until midnight. I took it everywhere. After a while, the late-night commute became routine. I'd get on the train at 11:15, pop in my headphones, and zone out for the 30-minute ride back to my apartment in Hongdae. The cars were usually pretty empty that late. A few other English teachers heading home, some students, occasional salarymen who'd worked late. Nothing ever felt dangerous, until one Thursday night in October. I got on the train at my usual time. The platform was nearly empty, just me and a handful of other passengers spread across the length of the train. I stepped into a car near the middle and sat down in one of the priority seats near the door. The car smelled like cleaning solution, that sharp chemical smell they use on the floors late at night, mixed with someone's fried chicken from a few rows back. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered occasionally, making everything feel slightly unreal. No one else was in my immediate section. The train started moving, and I pulled out my phone, scrolling through Instagram without really paying attention. At the next stop, a man got on, middle-aged, maybe late 40s. Black jacket, jeans, white sneakers, completely unremarkable. He sat down at the far end of the car, maybe 10 seats away, and looked down at his phone. I didn't think anything of it. 2 stops later, I glanced up from my phone to check which station we were approaching. The man had moved, not to a different car, just closer. He was sitting maybe 6 seats away now, still on the same bench, still looking at his phone. I felt a small flutter of unease, but I pushed it away. People move around on trains all the time. Maybe he wanted to be closer to the door for his stop. At the next station, I watched him out of the corner of my eye. When the doors opened, he stood. My shoulders relaxed slightly. He was getting off, but he didn't get off. He just stood there as the doors closed, then sat down again, 4 seats away from me now. My heart started beating faster. I looked at him directly this time. He was staring at his phone, but I noticed something that made my stomach turn over. The screen wasn't lit up. He was just holding it, staring at a black screen. His thumb wasn't moving. His expression was completely blank. The doors closed, and the train started moving. I gripped my phone tighter, my palms suddenly sweaty. At the next station, I made a decision. When the doors opened, I stood and walked quickly to the next car through the connecting door. I sat down in a new spot, farther from the doors this time, next to an older woman who was asleep with her head against the window. I tried to look casual, like I just wanted a change of scenery. The train started moving again. I watched the connecting door, my pulse loud in my ears. About 30 seconds later, it opened. He stepped through. He didn't look around, didn't scan the car like someone who was lost or confused. He just walked straight to a seat a few rows behind me and sat down. My hands started shaking. I could feel him back there. Could feel his eyes on the back of my head even though I refused to turn around. Over the next 10 minutes, I switched cars 3 more times. Each time he followed. Each time he sat a little closer. By the time we reached Hapjeong Station, 8 stops into my usual commute, I was in the last car of the train, and he was sitting 2 rows behind me. I could hear him breathing, slow and steady, like he was perfectly calm. I wasn't. My vision was narrowing, everything getting dark around the edges. My mouth was so dry I couldn't swallow. I felt like I might throw up. The train was underground now, deep underground, no cell service. I checked my phone 3 times already. No signal, no way to call anyone, no way to text for help. I looked at the other passengers in the car, an older woman near the front, earbuds in, eyes closed. A young guy with headphones in, nodding his head to music I couldn't hear. A businessman in a suit, staring at his laptop. No one was paying attention. I thought about screaming, about standing up and shouting that this man was following me, that I needed help, but I didn't speak Korean well enough to explain what was happening. I knew how to order food and ask for directions, but I didn't know the words for stalking or following or please help me. And even if I did, what would I say? He hadn't touched me, hadn't threatened me. He just moved seats. Would anyone even believe me? At the next stop, I stayed in my seat, trying to think, trying to decide what to do. So did he. The doors closed. The train started moving. I could feel him behind me, and I swore I could feel the air shift when he moved slightly, adjusting his position. My breath was coming too fast now. I was dizzy. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright. 2 stops later, I saw something that gave me an idea. When the doors opened, there was a group of people on the platform waiting to board, maybe 7 or 8 college students, laughing and talking, probably heading home from a night out in Taiwan. The second the doors opened, I stood and pushed past them as they got on, mumbling, "Excuse me," in Korean. I stepped onto the platform and immediately started walking toward the exit stairs, moving fast but trying not to run. I didn't hear footsteps behind me. When I reached the stairs, I glanced back. He was still on the train, standing now, right by the doors, hands in his pockets, staring at me through the window. The doors began to close, and just before they shut completely, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. Something else. Something that made every hair on my body stand up. Then the door sealed shut and the train pulled away. I stood there on the platform, alone, watching the last car disappear into the tunnel. Then I turned and ran. I didn't take the next train. I got out of the station and walked to the street level, even though it was past midnight, and I was in a neighborhood I didn't know well. I paid for a taxi, something I almost never did because it was so expensive, and gave the driver my address in broken Korean. He asked if I was okay. I said yes, but I wasn't. My hands were still shaking when I got home. I locked every lock on my apartment door and pushed a chair against it for good measure. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I went to the police. I tried to explain what had happened, using a translation app on my phone to fill in the gaps in my Korean. The officer was polite, but clearly skeptical. He asked for a description: black jacket, jeans, white sneakers, middle-aged, average height, average build. He wrote it down, but I could tell he didn't think there was much he could do. He said they'd review the CCTV footage from the train and follow up if they found anything. They never did. For the next month, I didn't take the subway after dark. I paid for taxis, even though it destroyed my budget. I asked coworkers for rides. I took the bus on routes that added an hour to my commute. I couldn't make myself get on that train again. Eventually, I had to. Money was tight, and I couldn't afford taxis every night, but I changed my route, took a different line that required an extra transfer, made sure I was never alone in a car. Even now, 2 years later, I still can't take the subway at night without feeling that prickling sensation on the back of my neck, that feeling of being watched. I think about that night sometimes. I think about how he moved closer, stop by stop, how he knew exactly what he was doing, how he timed it so I couldn't get off before the doors closed. And I think about that smile, not frustrated that I'd gotten away, not angry, just patient. Like he knew it was only a matter of time before he found someone else. Someone who wouldn't notice until it was too late. Someone who wouldn't run. 3 countries, 3 transit systems, 3 people who understood too late that they weren't just passengers, they were being hunted. When you're far from home, in a place where you don't speak the language and no one knows your name, you become invisible in all the wrong ways. The people who watch you know this. They know you won't ask for help. They know you'll second guess yourself. They know you're alone, and they know how to wait. If you've had an experience like these, something that still sits with you, something you can't quite shake, you can share it through the link in the description. Thank you for listening to Almost Alone. Stay aware, stay visible, and when you travel, trust that feeling when something isn't right. I'll see you in the next one.